to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live studio. Subscribe and follow today.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Oilers Live. This is the Sabres Oilers pregame edition, which happens, of course, tomorrow night in Edmonton. The Sabres are back in for a Western Canada road trip. And I've got as my guest for a little while tonight, John Wawrow from Buffalo, who is one of the AP sports writers in Buffalo. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks for having me on, Michael.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time. I know it's late out in Buffalo. We're talking just about 11:30 there right now. How's the day been for you out there?
Oh, busy watching football. Cold. Winter's finally arrived. We had a warm December, but we're getting back we're getting back into winter here in Buffalo. So not much snow, but it's what it is.
Yeah.
I've got hardy Canadian blood, so I can deal with this.
Right on. And you know what? Out here I'm actually based in Calgary, believe it or not. But here in Calgary, there's no snow. I had to go to the mountains on the weekend in order to get myself a little bit of a snow fix. Which us Canadians, right? We're
yes, we're all accustomed to it. We all live in igloos and blah blah blah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't have a ton of time with you tonight, so I'd like to, get right at it and chat a little bit about the Sabres and the Oilers. I was at both games last year when they did the Western Canada swing, the Calgary game where they won in overtime, and then, of course, the Oilers debacle, not so much for the Sabres last year, but the 5-0, I believe it was, win the next night in Edmonton.
Right.
In preparing for you to be on today, I did, of course, I did a fair bit of research and a lot of stuff I already knew. But these two teams actually, outside of the fact that they fought each other for the lottery pick for a number of years now, they've actually got a good history together of trades and players. Of course, there's two players, one of them not in the lineup today, that were both drafted by Edmonton, and that's Zach Kassian and Andre Sekera.
Right. Well, Zach had to find Zach. It took time for Zach to find his way.
Yeah.
Because he was definitely not going to be a fit in Vancouver. In Buffalo, and he wasn't really a fit in Vancouver per se until he kind of finally found his way. He had some personal issues, I think, and he's finally found a role for himself.
Yeah, well, when you're covering a team, how long have you been covering the Sabres for?
Well, I've been here in Buffalo since 2000. So, and before that, I was covering the Canucks.
And these two teams, I mean, besides the Canucks prior to that, so you have a lot of familiarity with Edmonton. I mean, but prior to if I went back kind of to 05-06 after the full year lockout,
right,
and compared the two teams, and what I expected to see was two teams that had a similar trajectory, but they really didn't, right? I mean, the Sabres. They, of course, the next two seasons after that, they didn't finish first in their div in 05-06, but they did in 06-07. We almost met them in 05-06.
Right. If not for that Game 7 and loss in Carolina, in which the Sabres were down to, that goes back. They were down 8 defensemen that series, and they finally they finally ran out of defensemen to beat Carolina.
Yeah, and then of course next year they get back to the conference finals again and meet the Senators.
Right.
I mean this team, right, in those years, and even they saw Drury and then Briere go, and I remember that, and of course there's the Vanek offer sheet. How sweet would that have been for Buffalo to take 4 first-round picks from Edmonton at that time?
Well, if you go in retrospect, Michael, I mean that was the start of the slide. I mean, I know Edmonton's slide started, in 06-07, where they went through that. Well, they went through that drought that finally ended, but that was a big summer in Buffalo as well. And there was a lot of panic, and it was mismanagement on the Sabres ownership side, where they thought they had Chris Drury locked up, and they were going to part ways with Danny Briere. Then Chris Drury walked on him, which became a late surprise. And to save face, ownership decided that when I believe it was Ron Lowe. Am I right there? Was he the GM then?
For Kevin Lowe.
Or Kevin Lowe. Sorry, Kevin Lowe. I'm old, so I've forgotten a lot of things. But it was Kevin Lowe. And when Kevin Lowe made that offer, the Sabres were kind of backed into a corner public relations-wise, where they actually had to try to save some sort of face. And Kevin caught them at a bad time, where, you know, the Sabres had in their mind, they had they couldn't lose Vanek. So they matched that offer. In retrospect, taking the picks would have really helped the franchise a lot more than losing Vanek. Thomas Vanek's a very good player, but to give up 4 first-round picks and that potential, and then to be forced to essentially build around Vanek because of the $50 million contract that they had to accept and with the offer sheet, really limited them in trying to build around Vanek and rebuild the core of the team that they lost. There was a lot of bad drafting over that time, but that was the start of what really has become 12, 13 years of darkness here in Buffalo when it comes to hockey. Sure, the Sabres made a few playoff rounds, made the playoffs a few times since then, but they've not won a playoff round since reached the Eastern Conference Finals in 2007.
Yeah, it's difficult for fans to accept, no doubt. One of the things I was curious about, and I was trying to, it's hard to get any kind of real look at that. And we're in a passionate hockey market here, with Edmonton fans. I've compared them to Montreal and Toronto fans with their, craziness and the passion that we have here. Is there a big body of Sabres fans out there that have that same kind of, can you feel that anger in the city around the franchise that we feel?
There's a lot of frustration. And Buffalo is, you can almost count it as Canada's, 8th hockey market, because it's a very passionate market, sports market for the Bills and the Sabres. And if you would have, the buzz around the city when the team was going to the Eastern Conference Finals in back-to-back years was electric, as it happens in a lot of Canadian cities. And there are a lot of passionate Sabres fans here in Buffalo and Southern Ontario as well, who make the short trip across the border from the Hamilton and St. Catharines area. But it is the fan base deserves better than what's happened, as I'm sure is the case, and I'm sure is the case in Edmonton.
Yeah.
But it's just been a string of bad decisions that have been made. Just wrong moves, bad drafts, and it appears the Sabres are finally getting up from under it, but impatience kind of gets in the way with the fan base, which hasn't really tasted any success for quite some time. I think the Sabres are still two years off from being actual bona fide contenders, but we're seeing signs of the rebuild finally taking hold under Jason Wawrow, who's now in his second year as GM.
Yeah, so he seemed to, the one thing that I noticed in looking back, right, is of course, as it got really bad for Buffalo, it seemed, Lindy Ruff was, as the coach always is the first to go, and then it appeared that Regier started to scramble a little bit, and that's when I noticed the trade activity really heat up for Buffalo. That's when, of course, Sekera, I think, and then as Tim Murray came in, he did what Oilers fans have hated for years. And I think in 13-14 there were like 4 teenagers that started the season that year.
In Buffalo?
Yeah, in Buffalo.
No, what happened was that the Sabres decided to spend a whole ton of money on a whole bunch of free agents that never panned out.
Yeah.
This was the end of Darcy Regeer's tenure, and then Tim Murray essentially came in and he started the team to have it bottom out. That was the tanking era. In which they got Sam Reinhart as the number 2 pick in the 2014 draft, and then completely had no interest in winning with Ted Nolan as a dead man walking as a coach under Tim Murray. There was no interest in winning in 2014-15, so they would get the best shot at getting, as Sabres fans would call, McEichel, getting the best shot at getting one of the 2 at the time. The problems really there was no it was in the late part of Darcy's tenure where he scrambled and tried to get had a bunch of youngsters try to start, and that backfired on the Sabres. The problem with Tim Murray is that he had some bad luck. Not getting Connor McDavid was a huge blow to the city's psyche and a setback in Tim Murray's rebuilding plans. Yes, they like Eichel. Yes, Eichel is a franchise-type player, but he's not Connor McDavid. I remember seeing Connor McDavid play for the Erie Otters back in the day. Connor McDavid still, I think, is a better overall player than Jack Eichel when it comes to hockey, and that's no slight to Jack. But that was a big blow, and what happened was then Tim Murray, as part of the bottoming out phase, his first trade in the rebuild was acquiring Evander Kane, and I just thought that, and he gave up a first-round pick and a lot to get Evander Kane and Zach Bogosian in that deal, and he paid too much for a guy that really couldn't be the leader of a young core. Evander Kane can do well in San Jose where there's an established culture. In Buffalo, it was the wrong move. And I know I'm rambling on here, but the biggest indictment against Tim Murray was he ignored the minor league team in Rochester. There was for all the draft picks that Tim Murray accumulated in tearing down the roster, there was nothing to show for it as far as development-wise in the minors. And that's what Jason Wawrow has begun attempting to correct.
Yeah, and it would seem, everything that you look at Buffalo right now, their young prospects are, if not the best in the league, they're among the best in the league. Let's, while I have you for, a couple more minutes.
Oh, and we can go more than, we can go a little bit over.
Sure.
I kind of rambled, so don't worry. Don't hold me to the 20 minutes.
All right, no problem. I've got, so I do have one question came in, and that's Sam Reinhart, 2 goals in the last 16. Anything up there?
It's Sam Reinhart being streaky Sam Reinhart. And another issue is that the Sabres have little top-flight depth in their lineup right now because they're still in that in developing talent phase of where they are. They're starting. Middlestat, who's a first-round pick, he's a youngster who may be in over his head, and they're hoping he develops on the fly. But he's at least another year away. They tried him to be the second-line center. It just doesn't work out. Beyond the first line of what is essentially Reinhart, Eichel, and Skinner, they don't have much there. Those 3 guys. I just did the math because I thought I'd prepared before I got on this show. The 3 of them have accounted for 55 of the Sabres' 125 goals this season. So you're not getting much from the rest of the roster, and that's been the issue. So, yes, Sam Reinhart is streaky, but when Sam Reinhart is playing on the top line, he's a goal scorer, but he he can't be the guy that carries the second line because there's not enough talent around him. Kyle, I'm sure people in Edmonton wondered about Milan Lucic, and I know that deal was,
yep.
I just didn't understand the length of that deal and how much money the Oilers paid for Milan at the time. But the Sabres have a very, similar type of contract that they can't get out of, and that's Kyle Okposo, who hasn't developed into the second line type forward that Tim Murray thought he was. And Tim Murray essentially signed Kyle Okposo because he lost out on Steven Stamkos, because Stamkos decided to stay in Tampa Bay. So Tim Murray went down to the second guy that he thought on his list and spent 6 or 7 year, $42 million contract.
Yeah.
And now the Sabres are saddled with that. So there's still mistakes that the Sabres from past regimes, the Sabres are trying to get out of while also developing younger talent. And that's where this team is at right now.
Yeah, so a couple of the players, and I'm curious, kind of going into tomorrow night's game. Some of the players that I'm kind of excited to go and watch are, of course, Middlestat. You mentioned Thompson. He's an up and comer, obviously. Dahlin, I'd like to know. One of the things I haven't, and of course we're right next door here to the Canucks, so you hear everything in the world about Pettersson, but.
Sure.
Tell us about Dahlin. Like, what is this guy like? Is he, and one of my listeners even said, Ristolainen's very underrated. But tell us first about Dahlin. I mean, how is this season? Is this guy, is he up for Rookie of the Year?
I don't know if he's going to get Rookie of the Year. I mean, he's going to get some votes in Rookie of the Year consideration, but I think Pettersson might, is he still out? I'm sorry, I've been focusing on
he
football
was out,
and college basketball
tonight.
But depending on how long he's out, I mean, Pettersson has a couple of years on Rasmus Dahlin, who's essentially he's a true 18-year-old who's asked to step in and play one of the toughest positions as a top-line defenseman and log 26 minutes, 23 to 26 minutes a game. So he's finding his way. There's been inconsistencies in his game, but the talent is there. I mean, some of the things he can do with the puck, his vision, his skating ability, his playmaking ability, and the instincts he has of jumping into the play. We'll see all that come to fruition in a couple of years. He's good, but he's not as good as he's going to be. And when Scotty Bowman tells me before the season begins that, this guy has some Lidstrom qualities to him and could very well be the Sabres' best defenseman in franchise history, I take that to the bank. That said, they need to develop him, as Scotty Bowman said, but I think the Sabres know exactly what they have in Rasmus Dahlin and know how to get the most out of this young kid as he makes mistakes in his rookie year. But the upside is very high.
Yeah, watching him as prior to the draft, I was, floored by some of the just natural talent he has. I did try to watch, a couple of the early games at the beginning of the year, and I've got some friends and a couple listeners that are Sabres fans. In fact, one is listening right now. For anybody out there, you can follow him at ADE780, so ADE 780, and he actually is the one that put me on to you to get you online. I know he's in Edmonton, living in Edmonton, and going to be at the game tomorrow night. But I watched Dahlin early on, and you could see, as you said, the flashes of brilliance. If anybody knows talent, I guess Bowman knows talent, and Lidstrom is Lidstrom. That would be pretty big shoes to fill. But what I saw from Dahlin early, and everybody, he does have to keep in mind, right, that there is a bit of an age gap there between the two, for sure. And he's, the year that he's having. If I look at Dahlin's stats right now, he's sitting at 24 points, which puts him leading ahead of every Oilers defenseman right now. So
right.
Yeah.
Right.
so
well, that's been the big bugaboo in Edmonton for how long?
Absolutely. And in fact, I looked at this team and I see Ristolainen and I see Dahlin and it's kind of odd because the two teams, I would say, they're both very similar in where they're at in the standings today. But Buffalo's definitely trending up, where Edmonton's either neutral or trending down. And a lot of that has
shocking.
To do with
like I was looking at the standings as I was preparing for this, and it's like, and I'm going, it's maddening. It has to be maddening up in Edmonton to see where the Oilers are. Given, I was there in 2015 covering the Women's World Cup of soccer in Edmonton the day, Connor McDavid was drafted. In fact, I went to one of Connor's first skates in early July when he joined the team and did a big feature on McDavid and McDavid Mania up there. And then when they made the playoffs, two seasons later, you think, well, there they go. But it's the same old Oilers, it seems, in some ways, and that's too bad.
It is. It is the same old Oilers, and right now, and I guess the only thing, and we talked about the Sabres prospects. The one thing that the Oilers have done in recent years is stock the cupboards a little bit more than they had in prior years. So they, the prospect system here is certainly better than it used to be. But I look at a team like Buffalo. I've got a Caps fan listening today, a Buffalo fan listening. I know two of those guys for sure. Farm teams or systems like Tampa Bay. And that's what Edmonton's been missing. And when I look at the Sabres, and I looked at that year where they had the teens come in and play, and we talked a little bit about that. That's also been a downside to what's happening here in Edmonton. Is in prior years we've been rushing just about everybody into the league, and much has been made as to how many first round or first overall picks we've had. It'd be nice if you had a legitimate system where those guys, had to fight for a job on the team and maybe get a chance to develop, in the farm leagues or go back to junior like Bouchard has this year, which, can only be done if you've got a good strategy and a good plan in mind. And while Chiarelli is certainly public enemy number one here, if you can say anything good about him, and the trades are really what everybody's really quite upset about. But the strategy to move and get some prospect depth in this team is certainly at least giving some of us, and I wouldn't say all of us, because if you follow Oilers on Twitter, you'll know there'd probably be people that would hate me just for saying anything good about Chiarelli. But that's the one positive.
Well, the one focus that Wawrow has made is to stock. He's made some good trades in stocking the talent up here in Buffalo to hold off on rushing guys up from Rochester. It also, he got a bonus in having Patrick Berglund inexplicably essentially quit the team, and so he saves $3.5 million of salary cap space, which is really going to bode well for the deal he made in acquiring Jeff Skinner, with those contract negotiations going up. So they have the formation of a top line right now, and now it's just a matter of filling in the pieces behind it.
So, before I lose you tonight, if there's anybody that you think Oilers fans should be watching for, anything kind of, what do you kind of feel is maybe the sort of pregame story going into tomorrow night for the Sabres? These are two teams, by the way, that absolutely need a win tomorrow. Very similar 10-game streaks right now.
Well, I know Jack Eichel and Connor McDavid don't like the comparisons between the two because, they went 1-2. But this really is a game that highlights 2015 and two generational players playing against each other. Jack Eichel hates Toronto and loves to beat Toronto, but I have found that Jack Eichel does step up his game whenever Edmonton's in town. I believe the last time the Oilers were in town, Connor McDavid may have scored the game winner in overtime the last time that happened. So the two know of each other, and they're always going to be compared. So it's always interesting to see how they play against each other, because there seems to be a little bit more jump in Jack Eichel's step when he's playing against Edmonton. The few times a year they get a chance to do so. And if the Sabres really don't want to squander the 10-game winning streak that they enjoyed back in November, they face a tough stretch here against a team that they should be able to beat on paper. So if last year the highlight of the season was going 3-0 during that Western Canadian swing, can they do it again? Because they're not back home until February 1st.
Oh, that's how long until they're back in Buffalo? Yeah. Well,
yeah, they're on I believe it's a 6-game swing that spans the All-Star break. So they play the 3 away in Western Canada, and then go back on the road after the All-Star break, and don't come home until hosting Chicago on February the 1st. So they're away for quite some time.
Oh, wow. The Oilers have pretty much the opposite of that, where their next 5 games are 4 of the next 5 are in Edmonton. After Buffalo, we fly out to Vancouver, and then back in Edmonton for Battle of Alberta, which usually is a good matchup no matter where the teams are. And then Carolina's in town, I think, on the Monday or Tuesday, but before the All-Star break. So, a little bit different for them. Both teams obviously are really fighting for a playoff spot. So I want to be respectful of your time, you went a little bit over for me, which I appreciate. I want to thank you for joining us here. I'm going to carry on tonight and see if I can get some call-ins and have a little discussion about the game tomorrow and where we're at. But would love to have you back. I think it's March when we play again in Buffalo, so I'll maybe reach out to you again, and hopefully we can get you back online.
Sure, shoot me a note, and thanks for having me on, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, and so for those that are listening in, they can find John at John Wawrow, which is JOHN_WAWROW. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Thanks again, John.
Thanks a lot.
Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
So March 4th is the next game. The Oilers play Buffalo after tomorrow night. Having John on was great. Getting of course always when you get a chance to do a little bit of background before I have a guest on, and kind of have a look and comparison of where two teams are. I expected to see the Oilers and the Sabres quite similar in how they got to be where they're at. In fact, they couldn't be much different. They're two teams that there is a definitive time about midway through the last 12, 13 seasons that you could tell when the Sabres turned down the path that they're at right now. And of course, Edmonton winning the draft lottery was a bad sign for Buffalo, and it's yet to be seen, but it was good for us Oilers fans out there. This team really was somewhat competitive up until 13-14, and the Oilers, we had a number of seasons prior to the 05-06 season where we were, sitting in that 9th spot. That's what Buffalo was like, I would say, kind of between 08, 09 and 2013, 2014 before they let go of Darcy Regier. There, of course, I think if you look at the two franchises, Buffalo's trending up a little bit, and Edmonton, as I said earlier, is a little bit neutral. I think that it's there's lots to be learned from watching a team like Buffalo for a GM that that might handle this team. If Chiarelli's gone at the end of the season, then you could look to Buffalo to see how to turn it around. Although I would say that they haven't quite turned it around just yet. They really have a little ways to go outside of the win streak that they had early in the season. They've had one of the worst winning percentages in the league since then. But that's not unlike the Oilers right now. We've had our ups and downs. We've had, it was only 7 or 8 games ago, or I guess now 10 games ago, where we were one of the hottest teams in the league, and Koskinen was flying and everything was going great, and that turned in a hurry when Clefbaum went out on the injury list. I'm opening up the phone lines. It's 587-907-5483. I'm going to stay live for maybe another half hour. One of the things that I looked at today was, I tried to look and see kind of what injuries meant to the Oilers. This was, to me, a really interesting look at two teams in the league that have consistently sat at the bottom, despite having some generational type of players. Don't fool yourself. Eichel might have been number 2, but he would be a star on any team. Dahlin, of course, is a natural talent. Guys like Middlestat and Thompson, which are up-and-comers on the Sabres, look really good. Reinhart, while John said he's a little bit streaky, Reinhart's a hell of a player. The other thing, they've got in their prospect system, they've got an Edmonton boy, Brendan Gould, and he's a top defense prospect. And of course, they just had the World Junior champion Luukkonen, the goalie for Finland, on the team. So 587-907-5483. You want to talk Oilers hockey? We can do that. I don't. It's a Sunday night, so I don't expect a lot of listeners tonight. But there've been a few. I've seen a few things on the chat and elsewhere. It was good to have somebody from Buffalo involved and chatting with us tonight. Hope everybody had a chance to watch some of the football tonight, of course, and everybody's favorite teams won. I suspect we do have one caller coming in. Just hold on 1 second, and we'll get them online here right away. Hi, it's Michael.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good. Who is this?
Jeff A. calling.
Oh, hey, Jeff. So it's all Sabres fans tonight.
Yeah, I know. I just thought I'd kind of chime in. It's the first time, I guess, and, just see how you doing and chat it up a bit, I guess.
Yeah, good. Well, so for those that are listening, and there's a few people out there listening tonight, Jeff was in the Oilerslive Cup, so he was a good supporter there in Edmonton prior to the Battle of Alberta game on, what was it now, the 9th, I think? Oh, feels like forever. And Jeff's, how long you been a Sabres fan for?
Oh, geez. I'd be coming up on 19 years.
Oh, wow. So, I as you know, and I think I let you know, I've got a couple of friends that are Sabres fans. One of them is from, of all places, Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan. And the only reason at the time when he was growing up, the reason he became a Sabres fan was everybody was cheering for Toronto, and he wanted to be a little bit different and was kind of tired of Toronto, so he picked the Sabres. Of course, they had some great teams back in the day, and so it's not like they were hard to cheer for. And Buffalo's always, other than recent years, put together some competitive teams together. How'd you become a Sabres fan?
I get that question a lot, and I feel like it's kind of a lame answer, but back in the year 2000, my auntie up and moved from Edmonton out to the Buffalo area. So I was kind of just really attached and close with my auntie, and I don't know, I was kind of a weird kid, and I was like, well, just because I'm born in Edmonton doesn't mean I have to cheer for them, do I? So at just a young age, I was about 12, I was about grade 6 or grade 7, back in the Hasek days. And my auntie moved out there, and she's been out there since the year 2000. And I still have about 6 or 7 family members out in Buffalo now. And I talk to them all the time. And I don't know, they come up and visit. They always bring me like Buffalo Sabres, like anything you could think of, like keychains, socks, goodies, anything you can find at like a Walmart or a dollar store, right?
Well,
so I just got it all now.
Yeah, I
it's
don't
kind of
think
stuck
that's
as a family, I guess.
I don't think that's too bad of a reason. I think there's probably a lot of Oilers fans that probably envy you because you've had a little bit more success than we have. So you remember 05, 06. How heartbreaking was that for you?
See, that was weird because, like, the Oilers' 8th place, like, nobody really expected them to go on the run they did back then. And Buffalo was actually, like, a favorite, and they were, pretty speculated to go far, right? So I was kind of getting into the hype of both, and I'm not going to lie, I was like 18 years old and going down White Ave, partying it up a little bit, right? But I was hoping, but not hoping, because I was like, oh man, if there's a Buffalo Edmonton Stanley Cup, I want Buffalo to win. But all my friends and family, like, you better not be cheering against your home team if that happens. And what are the odds of that? Like, I just never thought, like, my home team or my hometown team, my favorite team, go 1-1 in the Stanley Cup Finals. I just thought, like, it'll never happen in a million years, and it almost did. And I would have cheered for Buffalo, and it was pretty heartbreaking, but it never ended up happening, right? So,
no, but it was close. I mean, that's as close as you get, to having. Of course, that year was close to have Edmonton and Calgary series, which would have been fun too. If we had another year that there's a good opportunity, this would probably be the year for that. I'm kind of curious. Then I'm sure you probably had it banked that Buffalo was getting McDavid. What's that like? As an actual, like my buddy that I talk about, he had a McDavid Sabres jersey.
Oh, why?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, and he wasn't the only one. I mean, there was lots right out there that expected the Sabres to get McDavid. How'd that feel for you? I can tell you as an Oilers fan, that's probably the most joy I've felt as an Oilers fan in the last 13 years. And for obvious reasons.
Sorry,
yeah.
It was one of those things, honestly, where I honestly, thinking back, I don't forget where I was, like the time, the place, exactly, because I was with a group of friends. And we were all just kind of, actually, to make it personal, I used to be a professional wrestler.
Oh, really?
And I was actually, and I was actually on the road in Lethbridge, like getting ready for wrestling events later in the night. And just one of the fellow guys was from Edmonton and got on his phone and was like, oh, guys, it happened. And I was like, yeah, right. He's like, Edmonton won. I was like, no, they didn't. He's like, I swear to God. He showed me the alert on his phone. I'm like, no way. Like, I didn't want to get my hopes up because I was like, yeah, right. Like, they were last place. They had the best odds. Like, I didn't want to get too eager because I was like, no, it can't happen. Like, Buffalo can't get McDavid. It's not going to happen. So I didn't let myself get too excited. And then when Edmonton won it, there was like really of all other teams. So I heard it from all my friends and stuff like that for like months after that. Like, yeah, we got him, right? So, in hindsight, it's not looking like it's really paying off, but that's who knows? Because I love McDavid. I love the Oilers just because I'm a huge Sabres fan. I'm an Edmontonian. And honestly, I hate seeing the misery that they're all in. It's not fun seeing them drop to the basement and still be in this position, right? So I was sad as a Sabres fan to not get McDavid. But if he went anywhere else in the league, I'm glad my hometown got him, I guess. How about that?
No, you know what? It's great. And it's good to have you call in because and great to have John on as well, and thanks for helping set that up. I've actually over the last few years become kind of maybe I'm a sucker for misery, but I've become kind of a Sabres fan in the East, and some of that's having my friend around. Last year I went to both games, the Calgary game, where I put on a Sabres jersey for and I know you and I have been talking. You typically when I've run the live shows, you haven't had a chance to listen, but everybody that does know me knows I have two favorite teams, the Oilers and whoever's playing the Flames, and so that of course it worked out. I was at both games, and Eichel scored in overtime in Calgary, and my friend's he's not quite as maybe boisterous as I am. There were about four of us Sabres fans in the building in Calgary, and they scored in overtime, and I practically jumped out of the seat cheering, and I think he thought I was going to get beat up. We got into Edmonton that next night, and staying at the Hotel McDonald. The Sabres were there. We rode the elevator with Okposo. We saw the guys in and around the hotel, and as we walked in, I donned my Oilers jersey by this time. As we walked in, Sabres TV was greeted us at the gates and asked my friend if he wouldn't mind going and ordering a beer for Sabres TV. And so it was probably the ultimate Sabres trip for him. But again, there were maybe a dozen Sabres fans in the building. So I understand you're going to be there tomorrow night.
Yeah, there's not many Sabre fans around here, I've noticed. I'll get a little personal again. This will be my 9th Sabres and Oilers game. And once I was able to make the trip to Calgary, and I went to one Buffalo and Calgary game. Gosh, that was back in 2010 maybe.
Yeah.
And so this will be my 9th straight Sabres and Buffalo game tomorrow night. And it's kind of nice because I got a buddy out there who's got season tickets, and he's had them for 12, 13 years. And honestly, he kind of knows how big of a fan I am. And there's been many years where it's the only game I went to, and my buddy just was season tickets. Here, man, you're the only one I know that wants these, and take the Sabres tickets kind of thing. So I've been lucky. I've been consistently able to go. And tomorrow, my brother-in-law has taken me, and I got 7th row. And it'll be the closest I've ever been to Rogers Place. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And honestly, it's just a great atmosphere. I just love hockey in general, right? So win or lose, I'm just looking to have a great time and see all the other Sabres people, other Sabres fans and stuff like that. And so it should be good. Last year, actually, there's a Twitter handle out there called at Displaced Sabres. And I've been in talks with them. And last year, I was kind of their Edmonton guy, and I kind of orchestrated all their the Sabre fans. And I got to meet the girl who runs the Sabres Twitter account, and she took a picture of us, and the Twitter account from the Sabres tweeted it out and everything like that. And we're supposed to do it again this year, and it was crazy because I don't know if you saw a few days ago in Raleigh, the Sabres had hundreds of fans out in Raleigh.
I did see that.
We're lucky if we have 10 in our little group photo, so there's not many Sabre fans out here. But
at Displaced Sabres, eh? Yeah, I just found it. I'll look it up.
Displaced Sabres?
Yeah, at Displaced Sabres. So that's on Twitter at Displaced Sabres for anybody who wants to have a look. It should be a fun game. This is maybe the first time in a long time that the two of them will play in a meaningful game for both of them, which is scary in a way, but maybe good in terms of the hockey caliber that'll be played. Of course, recently it seems the Oilers, I need to find an extra gear or something to really put them over the top. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they can't get it together. That's that one's beyond me.
Yeah, it's been weird, especially on a Buffalo perspective. They just fell out of the playoff spot just yesterday, and they've been in the playoffs for months now, and now they're 1 point looking in. So tomorrow's game is huge because the win will put them back in. And of course, Oilers just dropping. It's bad timing because I have already talked to my brother-in-law today. I was I'm hoping for a win tomorrow for Buffalo, and no hard feelings, right? I'm not going to change my colors tomorrow night just because Edmonton's sinking. So it sucks what it is. If I piss some people tomorrow off, I do apologize now, but go Buffalo, go tomorrow night.
No, nothing wrong with that. You did. You tweeted earlier about tickets going for cheap in Edmonton. So Oilers fans out there that are listening, make sure you snap those up before any more of those displaced Sabres fans do. You asked, is it the team or is it because the Oilers are doing so poorly? It probably, and I think Ben responded to say it might be a bit of both. It probably is a bit of both because I noticed here for the Calgary Sabres game as well, there's a lot of tickets up for sale. I just noticed today, even prior to you mentioning that. So if it's they're just not a big draw in Western Canada. Right.
I was going to say, sorry, I was just a little shocked to see because, I don't know, in a way, I thought, like, Eichel and McDavid, maybe the Lufters lost in a bit, and Rasmus Dahlin's first visit here, I don't know, maybe the first overall pick's not as big as I thought he was, but I just kind of thought it'd be a little more attention than that. It just seemed, maybe just I'm paying attention a lot because of the Sabres and everything. It just seems like there's a lot of tweets out there, just people, like, trying to get rid of them and lowering the price, and I'm just like, wow, like... I cheer for a bad team,
Well, I think we're both in that boat right now. It's just tough to watch. Any given night. If we're not winning, and both teams are having a hell of a time putting together anything resembling the streaks that they've had throughout the season. If you and I'm probably going to shut it down here pretty quick. But if you had anything for tomorrow night, what do you think in terms will be the game story tomorrow night?
Well, that's a good question. I just think both teams are going to be hungry. Buffalo's lost 2 straight, and like I said, they're on the outside looking in now. So, of course, they're going to be chomping at the bit to get back in the playoff spot. And the Oilers, of course, that's self-explanatory. Coming off that Arizona game, and I'm sure they feel the heat from just everything and everybody going around right now. So I just feel like every game now the Oilers be in, you just feel like, is this going to be the game they snap out of it? Is this going to be the game they snap out of it kind of thing, right? So both teams, I feel like, are going to be hungry, and it should be hopefully it should be a good, intense game, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, we all hope that the Oilers show up. Have you felt at all in this? I know the Sabres have gone 3-6-1 in their last 10. Do you get a chance to watch every game? First off,
I will admit, like, not this season because I kind of changed jobs over the summer, and I actually have been working nights, and it kind of sucked, and it's taken over just my life in a way, working night shifts overnights. Like, I get off when the sun rises kind of thing, so it's not usually fun. And I have to book work off tomorrow just to go to the game and things like that. So usually I say yes. Like, I had the NHL Sunrise package for like 8 years. I watch every game I can, but most years I had like a day job. And just over the summer, I got a new job where I'm working nights and evenings and stuff. So this season I've only caught a couple, but that's why I take to Twitter a lot more because I kind of trust and just a lot of resources and information on Twitter, right? So this season I haven't caught many games, but it's just been just life and work and family and just so busy.
Are the Sabres fans on Twitter as negative as the Oilers fans?
Oh, 100%. It's so kind of funny to see because they're always calling for Housley to get fired and everything like this. Yeah. And just last night when they dropped out of the playoffs, like, oh, this is it. They're not making it again. Like, they're not going back to the playoffs. And it's kind of just, Edmonton East in a way, the way they react.
Well, I guess in some ways that's really good. As the first comment on the chat window today was fired Chiarelli before John and I even said hello. I think that was up there. What I was going to ask if you'd been watching is if there's any, concern as a Sabres fan that the Sabres just, aren't showing up to games, because that's been kind of the game story of, 3 or 4 of the last 6 or 7 games for the Oilers is they just don't seem to be bringing their A game or motivated enough to play these teams. I'm just wondering if you think Buffalo's had the same problem, or has it just been, just running into a string of bad luck and bad bounces or whatever the reason might be.
Well, recently, I'm not sure exactly. Eichel was gone for a few games. Like, he missed 3 games.
Yeah.
So they were without Eichel for about 2 games, and it just showed once again that you need that depth. You can't just rely on your captain or your go-to guys so much. And just like Edmonton, like if Connor was gone for a couple of games, it'd be exposed as well. So I think just they got a little exposed with Eichel gone, and just they went on that 10-game winning streak early in the year. And honestly, I think they got lucky. Like that wasn't really expected out of them. And honestly, I didn't expect them to make the playoffs. So I feel like the way they're playing now, I feel like it's kind of, I feel like the team they are, like just on the brink of the playoffs, on, you know, wild card spot. So I honestly feel like they've overachieved up in this point. And this is kind of the team that I kind of expected in a way, right? Kind of like on the shoulder, looking into the playoffs, hopefully trying to get in, right? So in the Jeff Skinner stuff, like 30 goals already, that's just, nobody expected that either, right? Like they finally got that goal-scoring winger, but they didn't expect that type of goal-scoring winger, right? So I honestly feel like they've been in a bit of a rut, but I hopefully think they're going to climb out of it because they're getting everybody back healthy, and I'm hoping they're, you know, they see what's in front of them. There's going to be a playoff atmosphere type game the rest of the way through too, right? So I think, I know I'm biased, of course. I think they'll make the playoffs.
Well, and I wish I had your optimism for the Oilers. I as a fan, of course, I'm cheering for them every step of the way to make the playoffs. We'll see what happens. I think you know what? I think I'm going to probably shut it down for the night. I want to thank you again for setting that up with John and for calling in. It's great to chat with you. I'm in section 204 tomorrow night. We should chat, and if anybody else wants to stop by and say hello, you can't miss me during intermission. I'm about 10 feet tall, and right by there's a Oilers merchandise store there. I'm usually hanging out there. So I'll be there. I'll be at every Oilers game this upcoming week, as I'll be in Vancouver as well to watch them play the Canucks midweek, and then back in Edmonton for the Battle of Alberta and onwards. So I'm going to be right in the thick of it and get to see some of the stuff that's happening off to the side, which is always kind of neat to see. I think for you as a Sabres fan, and have you been out to Buffalo to watch a game?
No, I have not actually, which is funny because like I said, I got like 6 family members out there, and they always say, "Oh yeah, whenever you come out here, you can stay at our place, no hotels or anything like that." But no, I've never been out to Buffalo yet, so I got a place waiting for me to stay if I ever go out there. And my auntie, she doesn't. It's funny because my auntie doesn't follow hockey at all. She always asks me how Buffalo's doing when she lives in Buffalo. Yeah. But she always tells me, she's like, "Oh, if they ever win the Stanley Cup, she's like, I'll help you fly your way out here and you can enjoy the parade or something like that." Because she always says, "I hear the parade's going to be pretty crazy if they win." Oh. Like, yeah, Auntie, it might, yeah. So
I did get chirped the other day from my Sabres fan friend, and also, of course, being in Calgary, Flames fans all the time are chirping me. So I made a little meme for them to say, "Act like you've been there before," and and he's, you know, he kind of took that poorly. And you know, the Sabres have been so close, you know, a couple of times, and I think, yeah, you know, they've got you know, I think that you're the lucky thing for you as a Sabres fan is it really looks like they, you know, are close to turning the corner. I mean, they've got just outstanding prospects in the system. Some of who we'll see tomorrow night, you know, 3 or 4 guys that are, you know, with the team. But then, of course, there's Alex Nylander. There's an Edmonton boy in the system called Brendan Gould. He's a left shot D-man that grew up in and around Edmonton. You know, Luukkonen, of course, you watched during the World Juniors, who was outstanding. And is outstanding. He's probably a couple of years away. Of course, they've got Allmark as their backup, and I think he's been a very capable backup, you know, for Hutton. So I think lots of good things for the Sabres. I think if you're, you know, looking for a team to cheer for in the East, well, why not the Sabres?
No, exactly. Hey, Michael, thanks for taking my call and thanks for having me on. You know, I've been a fan of you guys for a while, or your show in a while, and it's nice to finally get on and have a chat with you. So awesome. Hopefully I can run into you tomorrow night. Okay?
Yeah, for sure. All right, you have a great night. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, take it easy. Thank you.
You too. So that was Jeff. You can find him at ADE780 on Twitter. Of course, he's a Buffalo Sabres fan, and you know, it's it's really hard to dislike Sabres fans. I mean, not so hard to dislike Flames fans or Canucks fans or Leafs fans, but Sabres fans always seem to be a good bunch. A little bit heartening to realize that as a fan base, though, they're just the same as us in they're calling for Housley's head or whoever. I think Wawrow's been more or less unscathed by this, but he's also come into a time where he's got Dahlin and Eichel and some good players. But that patience wears out if you have generational talents like we've got in McDavid and Draisaitl. Of course, Reinhart was picked second overall, just in front of Draisaitl. So that's there's the Reinhart Draisaitl connection and the McDavid Eichel connection. Of course, Zach Kassian was drafted by the Sabres, and then there's the the Vanek offer sheets. Some of the things that kind of put the two clubs closely related. And then I think that if you look at the past sort of 4 or 5 years, there's a lot of similarities in what's led to each team having some troubles. I think that's it for tonight. So again, to recap, we had John Wawrow, John _WAWROW. Give him a follow on Twitter. AP sports writer out of Buffalo. And Jeff Aid called in at ADE780. He's an Edmonton boy that is a Sabres fan and a good guy. Had a chance to play hockey with him at the Oilerslive Cup that we had, which, just to let you guys know, we will have that happening again, but this time in Calgary, and that'll be happening April, I think it's the 9th. I'll just double check. It's the next Battle of Alberta game, or the last Battle of Alberta game that's here in Calgary, and hopefully that's a meaningful game for Calgary or for Edmonton. That game. All right, everybody, you have a great night. Again, if you're at the game tomorrow, look me up, section 204. I'd love to meet some of you and have a chat. And have a great night, and let's go Oilers.